ask for a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A2 to prevent the disclosure of privileged student information under 115C-402 of the North Carolina General Statutes and FERPA 20 USC 12, and pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3 to consult with our attorney to consider and give instructions concerning a potential or actual claim, administrative procedure, or judicial action, Smith versus UCBOE. Do I have And I will call this meeting to order. I'd like to turn to Ms. Harrell for the invocation, please. And let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the agenda. I don't believe I have any additions or subtractions from the agenda at this point.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second. Well, that's fine. Do I have I do have a motion and a second. I was thinking of number 3. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. Number 5, consent agenda is is for approval, and I probably should have pulled one thing from the consent agenda.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, may I speak to
Yes.
the two-way radio agreement?
Can we pull that off, though? I hate to speak while it's on the consent agenda. It's normally not our way of speaking while it's on the consent agenda.
Just one qualification. Basically, it's and if you allow me to be heard before we make that decision.
Okay.
It's basically for approval. We have negotiated with the county. We have a deal that's highly beneficial to the schools via equipment and as well as financial arrangements. And the only qualification that we need to make clear is our legal staff is reviewing the written agreement with the county, and that I would ask, if the board has no objections, that we approve this contingent upon legal tweaking by our counsel and their counsel before we execute. And if there are no major problems, we go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. Then I will leave it on the consent agenda unless somebody has other comments that they need to make, and then we'll take it off and discuss it. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I wasn't sure how short that was going to be. So the motion is to approve the consent agenda? Thank you. A second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. And now we will go to Mr. Stewart again for the CCEP, Community Construction Equity Plan, please.
Okay, the Facilities Committee has vetted this plan. There were a lot of things to look at. It took a good bit of time, and I want to express my gratitude to the members of the committee once again for a job well done. Items were ranked in numerical significance and importance to us, and typically we will forward the entire document to the county, but items that are in the 12 category will be first funding priorities, 11s down the line, 10s, and then 9s if we get to them. Everything down to basically if there was a 4, if the commissioners find the way to fund it, it eventually would be addressed. But like I say, Facilities has vetted this, and unless there are specific questions or concerns that we can address concerning the CCEP tonight, I don't see the need to go line by line to review this entire document.
Can I just add, Mr. Stewart, while you were eloquent in telling us how we went about it, just for the new members, when he talks about 12s, each member of the committee had to rank the items 3, 2, 1, or 0, and the 12 comes from all of us giving the item a 3, so it would be ranked as a 12.
I have a question. Mr. Stewart, I just want clarification that this is just in an order. It's not an order of priority, correct? It's just an order of all 12. So in the event that we go out for 200 million and we get 100 million, then we will go through and reprioritize. This is not the order in which we see it.
There's not a subcategory order suggested within the 12s, 11s, or 10s. It will be contingent. If we approve this tonight, it will be, in my opinion, if the board concurs with the instruction to have staff start a conversation with Mr. Yates, the county finance director, to see what might be available for either 2/3 bonds, what might be available as pay-go, what might be available as a potential bond issue. And the longevity of this plan could be out, 6, 7 years to make it palatable to the taxpayer. So, and for the new members on the board, I will clarify, this is our priorities. Once we kick it over to the county commissioners, at that point, they actually have the statutory authority that they can go through and rank these projects in the way they want to fund them. We've seen that in the past. Don't know if they'll do it that way or not, but like I say, basically the ranks are just identifying high priority, and down the line. That's basically how it works.
Yes, Dr. Ellis?
I will say that staff has already started with preliminary conversations with the county. I've met with Ms. Cotto, and I know that Dr. Webb and Mr. Karpinski have had an ongoing conversation with Mr. Yates about funding and some possible scenarios and that kind of thing. And I think we're just waiting on the board to, when they approve something, wants to put paper to pencil. But it is not a surprise to Ms. Cotto or Mr. Yates. And we've had some what-if conversations, not in depth, but trying to, knowing this is coming, so it won't be a surprise to anyone. So I certainly would concur that we've not put anything on paper yet, but we've had the conversations like that of which you just spoke.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I have been pleasantly surprised and greatly encouraged by the conversations between UCPS and the Board of County Commissioners and their staff. I feel like we're making real progress. There's definitely a line of communications that is open that necessarily might not have been in the past, but I'm getting good feedback as far as some of the conversations I'm having as well. So I'm excited about this.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Mr. Sides?
question.
Sure.
If you or Mr. Stewart or Dr. Ellis could kind of weigh in on the role that the working group plays in this and kind of a timeline for them to figure in. I also have a question. Well, I'll let you address that and I'll come up with the other questions. You kind of just address where the working group figures into all this in the process.
And chime in if I misstep, but the basic idea is to get our capital plan to the commissioners and to the working group. The working group is a group of 14 individuals that is 7 picked by us and 7 picked by them to work on how the funding should come about. I do not believe the working group has been instructed to go through and pick items and decide what can be funded and what can't be funded.
So they won't be doing their own ranking of the items, independent of ours.
I certainly can't help individuals doing whatever they wish with it.
But that's not the intent.
But that's not the intent by law. And would you like to clarify some of that, Dr. Ellis?
I think you're spot on. As a matter of fact, I asked Michelle to pull up the statute. So let's just read this into record. It says, okay, I'm looking for the working group language. On or before August 1, 2014, the Union County Board of Commissioners and the Union County Schools shall jointly, this is jumping around, shall jointly establish a working group to develop a multi-year plan to address existing and ongoing capital needs of the Union County Schools. And it says shall jointly establish a working group to develop a multi-year plan to address the existing and ongoing capital needs. It does not say they shall prioritize them.
And Mr. Sides, I'd like to point out that both co-chair Amy Bernard from the county side and co-chair Britt Hadley on our side have been in attendance at facilities meetings. We've also made this document available to them as well as the commissioners when the dissemination was made earlier to all of y'all. So they've been vested in the process, and I think we'll see this move fairly quickly. But before they can really engage, we need to approve the plan and forward it to them.
Okay. And so basically before our next regular meeting on the 10th of March, if any individual members not in facilities have any strong thoughts on, no, this is not ranked high enough and here's my case why, that would be the place to do it. And then we would vote on it, either those changes or in entirety. So that's that's our homework for the non-facilities committee meeting members to go through that before the meeting on the 10th, where we hope to finally sign off, correct?
Sums it up pretty darn good.
Okay.
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Hadley yesterday, Mr. Britt Hadley, who was our group's chair of this co-chair, and he asked if he and Ms. Bernard could come sit down with Dr. Webb and me, and to so they could be a clear understanding of some. It's for clarification. I don't think it was anything other than to seek knowledge to understand more about this. And I said certainly we would be happy to meet with them to answer questions that we could with them. But when you asked that question, I think for full disclosure, that has been asked and answered.
Any other questions about the procedures, what we'll go through between now and the 10th? Seeing and hearing no more, we'll consider that information closed for the time being, and unless Mr. Stewart has something else he'd like to add.
Enjoy your reading and look forward to your feedback.
That's exactly what he told the facilities committee, by the way. Well, it was a little shorter than that, a little meaner than that, but that's what he told us. We can now move on to number 7, the District 6 seat. Mr. Guzman, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The last strategic planning committee meeting we held, we discussed the applicants for the District 6 seat. Prior to that, we asked the community to submit letters of intent or letters of interest for the seat along with resumes. We received 11 resumes, and at that point, the strategic planning committee got together to kind of bring those names down to something we could bring to the full board. At that meeting, our committee came down to 3 names that we now bring to the full board, those being Kathleen Heintel, Sean Marr, and Jason Martin. And I also want to say at this point, I do want to thank all the 11 applicants for stepping forward and showing interest in wanting to serve on the Board of Education. We very much appreciate the interest and, again, wanting to step forward and serve the community and the children of Union County.
Well, you took the next words right out of my mouth. I was going to thank everyone. I think it's admirable that those folks would step forward, and some of them are here today. Thank you very much. I think it's very important what you've done. There's a lot of people in the community that care about what goes on in the schools. I would like to add a couple of things to that. In following the way we picked the replacement for District 1, I would like all the individual board members to go home from this meeting and begin doing your homework between now and the 10th on top of your CCEP homework. Do whatever diligence you need to ascertain which of those candidates you would most like to see share a seat up here and take the abuse. I mean, enjoy sitting in these seats and working on these things for the school system. So do your homework, come with one person in mind, and we will decide on the 10th who that person will be. And the following month, I believe, we will swear that person in and they will be sitting with us up here. Any questions? Thank you. Number 8, the legislative visit update. Ms. Boyd and Mr. Guzman. I understand that you two weren't able to make the trip to Raleigh, another weather event, but you did a Google Hangout with our representatives, and Dr. Ellis was there, I believe. Would you two care to take it from here and explain it?
Yep. Thank you. I would like to say that, even though we couldn't get to Raleigh, I think we did the next best thing. We met the Monday night before the delegation, Mr. Greg Hazlitt, Ms. Rita Webb, Mike, myself, and Dr. Ellis. And we met with Representative Horn, and Representative Arp came in probably after 15 minutes. And it was it was like we were there. I'll just talk a little bit about, and then Mike can add in, Mr. Guzman can add in. We talked about driver's ed, and Mr. Horn said that it is a priority in the House, and that Pat Hurley is leading that initiative. It seemed that's something that they really think that maybe they can go after. Now, Dr. Ellis, in trying to be prudent and figure out a way, you can talk a little bit about.
I think I told you that we were working on doing an online modules that we could save between $150,000 and $200,000, where we rented up the pipeline to Raleigh, and the gentleman's name escapes me. John knows his name. I don't know.
Flighty.
Mr. Flight, there you go. Said absolutely not. They would not approve that. Said they had done some pilots in years past and only 2 of those were operational, and they would not. And I told Mr. Horn, you know, if the state's not going to pay for it and they're telling us we can only charge $65 and they're not going to allow us to be innovative with the online, you know, I'm crying uncle from every angle. And he guaranteed that by the end of business today, if I remember correctly, that he would have a conversation with the folks that had made that decision to see about changing it. I did say that we had developed the majority of it. We were about finished with it, but that we would give that to every LEA in the state if they wanted it at no charge, because every school district is under the same gun that we're under with this. So I've not heard from him today, but typically Mr. Horn will text me 10, 11 at night. So
Right.
the day's not over.
So we felt really good about the driver's ed. Then we got to the school calendar, which after feeling really good about driver's ed, Mr. Horn said that he's holding about 9 bills on the school calendar and that none of them will go anywhere because the Senate leadership is very adamant that they're not going to do anything. The job and commerce folks are really adamant. They said they need those kids to work during those summer months. They need them for their activities. And the best that they can do is the calendar flex bills, which really doesn't work for us. It would allow us to do it for certain schools and certain programs, and that's certainly not where we want to go. So we didn't hear the same type of news for the school calendar, but at least he was honest in what he could do. Then I spoke on A through F, and we went through the problems with that, the 15-point this year, the 10-point next year, the formula, which we felt should be more of a 50-50. And Representative Horn has already filed 2 bills. One is to redo the formula to 50-50, and the other is to keep the 15-point scale. And the reason he did that is we can get a win, so it won't be all or none. Hopefully both of them will go, but if not, at least if we get one. So he recognizes the importance with that. And then the ADM continuation budget, that's where we're asking them to fund our growth. You know, you give us these positions, but we need to fund our growth. And you know, they went through a lot of round and round, and Representative Arp assured us that we would see that. He said it wasn't in the continuation budget. We said, we don't care where you put it, just make sure you put that in there. It'll be a deficit of $3 million approximately. That's the conservative number. And then
One thing to that, with the 3 million, everybody needs to know class size will increase. If that is not funded, the major thing that we will see in Union County Public Schools is grades 3 through 12 class size increase based on that, because 85% of our money is tied up in people. And so if we lose that, it will have to be people, and that means class size will go up. And I just want that. I will be talking about that on a monthly basis.
Right. And then we got to teacher pay, and we were our time was kind of wrapping up. And, you know, what Representative Arp, you know, we were talking, Ms. Rita Webb, you know, as a former teacher and principal, was talking about how this last pay raise didn't really help the veteran teachers. It helped the new teachers. And what Mr. Arp said is what he heard from everybody that was champion is that new teacher pay is what really needed to be increased. And that's what he heard. And so we were kind of wrapping up. But the good thing is that we asked them to have a legislative breakfast back here in Union County, and they are open, and we are working toward a date for that. And Mr. Horn also said that he wants the delegation to continue, and we meet by conference call every 2 to 3 weeks. And I thought that was wonderful. He said that way we can mark progress. you can hold me accountable, and we can keep Union County on the radar. Also, I asked him what could we do to help him, because he is fighting an uphill battle in the Senate. And he said that emails are not effective. And then the emails that you copy and paste, he said he gets 500 a day. That's not effective. He said something that they do not get are letters. Good old fashioned write a letter and mail it. So if we could have our constituents mail letters, phone calls, they don't really get a lot of phone calls. He said phone calls are good. Letters to the editor, articles in the newspaper. So we are working with our priority. You know, they did ask, you know, we gave them all the materials, what our priorities are, but that's something that's very good, because I feel like he's working for us, and it is an uphill battle. The House is a little bit more amenable than the Senate right now. And I asked for the names of these people. I don't care if they don't live in Union County. I'll send Berger in a letter, you know, as a concerned parent in the state of North Carolina. Mr. Guzman, did you want to add anything?
Well, I just would add that I thought it was a very good meeting, even though we weren't there face to face. I think the fact that we were kind of on Google Hangout and kind of on a conference call, but we got to get those guys in Raleigh teched up a little bit, so we can do things a little more technology wise. But I think overall it was very good. I think it was also very good having stakeholders in the room with us, so they could really see kind of the behind the scenes issues and some of the things we run up against. I think it brings a new perspective to an audience who typically probably sees just a board meeting, but not necessarily, you know, all the back and forth and all the considerations that have to go into certain issues. So I think the stakeholders kind of left there with a new appreciation for what has to be considered and dealt with. So all in all, I think it was a really good meeting.
Yeah, I came out feeling very hopeful. If nothing else, we'll just hear from us again in 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll just keep saying, you know, we'll touch on the 3 that we didn't get a chance to touch on, and we will have the breakfast here and keep the dialogue going. And we want to keep that going even when session is not going and when we're not asking for bills, so that they understand. Are there any questions?
I was just going to ask, I think you answered it right there at the end. I was going to ask, you weren't able to, Representative Brody or Senator Tucker were not able to schedule it at the time. So I hope we'll be able to get them.
We'll invite them to the breakfast. You know, the thing is, Representative Horn was in contact with Senator Tucker, and he said, what can you do for me? And, you know, he pretty much knows that the Senate leadership, they run the show.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to do is come with the common ground. We win some and you win some. So he has been having lunch with, you know, Senator Tucker, but we will invite them to our breakfast. I saw Representative Brody Saturday night, and we talked some, but obviously we're going to invite them when we have our breakfast. Yes, ma'am.
In the future, at whatever point, the 2 to 3 week time span that you want to have additional contact, will other stakeholders have an opportunity to become involved?
Well, you know, we asked that. Mr. Greg Hazlett, he was really, really appreciative of being a part of the process. And he said, this has been so helpful. Will you let some other community members get involved? And what we agreed upon, it's a learning curve. You know, we spent a couple hours the night before talking, and I think it would really be nice for those community stakeholders to be able to see this through and be able to say, this bill was passed and we helped. And what we would do is we would invite others to the legislative breakfast, and then any other initiatives that we have going on, I would urge other board members to bring in other community stakeholders on other issues. Just maybe, you know, with this one, I'd really like to see the continuity. You know, Ms. Rita Webb, as a former principal and teacher, she added so much value to that, and she knows a lot. To that learning curve would be valuable, and I think it would speak volumes for them to be able to finish this out. But I urge any other initiatives that anybody brings up that you absolutely grab a couple community stakeholders. It was great. You know, Mr. Hazlett was able to speak as a parent with 3 high schoolers and what that driver's ed would do to him and how that would affect him, how that would affect the economically disadvantaged. So in this particular instance, we will invite a couple more to our breakfast. Definitely, I've already made that promise, but we're going to stick with the 2 that's been on this delegation in fairness to them since they've done a lot of the homework. Thank you. Any other questions?
Now, I'd like to add that later that evening, Representative Arp called me, and we talked for a while. And remarkably, we all said the same thing. Mr. Arp took his takeaways from the meeting were the same as yours, and I was just smiling about that. That it's very seldom that so many people can be in a room and everybody comes out with the same story. But he reiterated all that for me, and also said that he was pretty excited about the legislative breakfast. I think they told you that Fridays were their best days. He brought up the letter writing rather than the emails. So he touched on all the same points you did when y'all talked to me about it. So I thought it was good that we all started off on that same level of understanding.
Nope, that's really good to hear. So everyone that's here and listening, get out your stationery and your pen and paper, dust it off.
The good old days.
The good old days. Go get some, go buy some if you have to, and start writing letters. Thank you.
Ms. Malarkey has already reached out to Representative Horn's assistant, and we're waiting to hear back some dates. They're in the process of getting some dates for us. We did that the day after the meeting, whatever day that was. Was that yesterday? I don't date. I have been up since at 3:30 every morning worried about weather, so I could not tell you anything about the days. So.
I might like to add, Mr. Arp did say, and I don't know whether he shared it with anyone else, but he did say to me that he thought this was a most effective way to reach out to him. He and I talked about, and he and I had done several legislative trips to Raleigh, and he said he thought this was much more effective than driving all the way to Raleigh and driving all the way back. He said, because while we're here, we have lots of committee meetings and things like that, and we can schedule a little bit better if we have a Google Hangout or a phone conversation. So I think he was appreciative of it in light of the fact that the weather caused you not to do it according to our plans. And he did share that with me.
That's all.
Hearing no more conversation about the legislative visit, thank you very much, both of you. I think you put a lot of time and effort into it, and thank you especially to the community members. I think they probably maybe had more takeaway than the rest of us did out of that. Let's move on to number 9, announcements. Dr. Ellis, I think you have an announcement first, and then we'll continue with the board.
We have missed 3 days now due to inclement weather, and I keep looking outside to see if it started, because when it starts, it's supposed to be 1 inch to 2 inches an hour. And I told Mr. Collins we had to get everybody out here as soon as we could with weather. That I want everyone to know that we are not doing nothing. Last night, Charlotte Mecklenburg announced they were going to forgive 4 days. Well, that's great. We have been assessing the total number of hours. The law says you must have 185 days or 1,025 hours of instruction. We are going to make up the first work day, either on March 6th or March the 16th, I think it is, for the 6th for traditional, the 16th for year-round and early college, I believe. So we're going to make that one up. And before I come to you, to forgive days, I will need board approval. And before I come to you, it's a lot like a math equation. I need to know the variables to do the math problem. Right now, I don't know the total number of days we've missed. It is not my intention, if I can help it, for children to have to go to school on Memorial Day. It is not my intention, if I can help it, for children to have to give up spring break, okay? I understand the way parents feel about that. And if we don't miss any more days, we can probably work it out. But if we miss 5 or 6 more days, I can't tell you what, because every time we have a 2-hour delay, we have to count that against our hours that we're in class. And I will tell you the thing that keeps beating in the back of my head, and I was in 3 Title I schools today working, is that children in Title I schools need every minute of instruction they can get. And if I ask you to waive days, those are days of instruction those children aren't going to get. Now, while I understand the convenience of it for Memorial Day and things like that, I will tell you I struggle as a teacher and as a principal with saying, oh, we can just give up X number of days. Because we test, the 140 days is the magic number for testing. And that's where I am. I have also absolutely abhor Saturday school. I was a teacher and taught Saturday school, probably taught you, Miss, in Saturday school. No, I mean, that's when we had makeup days, not for being bad. Lord. No, 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 no. Many a times as a teacher and as a principal, we've held school on Saturdays to make up snow days. I find those days to be worth little to nothing because you feed folks breakfast and then you dismiss at 11:30. My word, there is just little to no academic value, in my opinion, having lived it. So I'm probably not going to do Saturday school. I don't want to take up a Memorial Day. And I don't want to have to get into spring break. And we've started getting emails, and some of them have been nice, some of them have been venomous. And I don't know why the venom, because nothing's been decided yet. I understand that folks have made plans and bought plane tickets or bought whatever, vacation time, whatever. It is not my plan to take spring break, but I don't know how many days of snow we're going to have. If we don't have many more, I think I can come to you with some waiverable days if you will approve it. But guys, when we get to talking 4 or 5 days, that's a week of instruction for our neediest children. And so then you've got to weigh, and I've got to do some thinking on this, but please know that staff is in the process of thinking about it, and that at the March meeting, we should know the 10 days ahead, the forecast, and by the third week in March, we ought to be about finished with bad weather. And my goal is for the March board meeting to come to you with a recommendation, and it will more than likely include waiving some days because we do have the hours that we can waive some.
Is it possible to add time to the school day?
Absolutely. But I will tell you, I get emails from people saying, we added 11 minutes. Dr. Ellis, you have taken up our dinner time. That is valuable time for us. And I just sent back, thank you for sharing your opinion, because I will tell you the one thing that will be true about every bit of this. Any decision I make and ask you to approve will not be popular with somebody.
Sure.
So, yes, it will probably be a combination of minutes and waivers, but I do not want anybody to say that is written in stone, because if we're out another week, there's going to be some hurt. There's going to be some hurt to that. So I just wanted everybody, I wanted to say it on video. I wanted to say it to everybody here because I intend to send out an email to principals saying the same thing, but I wanted to say it to the board first.
Dr. Ellis, perhaps you should defer to our state legislature. If you're getting ugly emails, just ignore them. If you don't get a letter or phone call, it's no big deal, right?
I get those too, sir.
Dr. Ellis, would you care to weigh in on the possibilities of being out of school tomorrow?
Jared, the last time I saw Jared, Dennis's sole purpose here, well, not his sole purpose, but he is to start waving madly in the back the first snowflake that falls. And that was the directive, the first snowflake. I do believe that we're going to get 3 to 5 or 6 to 8 inches, depending on where it comes through. And I've got folks in this room that are watching it right now. And I don't know where Jared is, but he's on the phone outside talking to emergency management. And you need to know this. I read with amusement the Facebook comments about the weather call because I don't ever do either one of them right. But before we make a decision, we talk with Sergeant Leach at the Highway Patrol, the State Highway Patrol. We talk with emergency management, the Sheriff's Department, and the police, the Monroe PSO. And that's a lot of people to talk to between 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning. But we hit base with every one of them. And if they say it is not safe to go out, let me tell you something, this girl doesn't go. I will take all the hits anybody can throw for the life of one child or one employee. We saw bus wrecks in Charlotte yesterday. A 22-year-old's life was taken on Parkwood School Road. Now, I understand that was not weather related, or I did read that at one point in time. I got a message from the State Highway Patrol thanking us because of the diligence of the school system. Fewer wrecks happen because when you think about the machine that is Union County Public Schools, 42,000 students, about 5,000 employees, give or take, and the parents on the road because of school and something, we create a lot of traffic every day. And I got 2 text messages via whomever that said, thank you for being judicious, that we support you. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into it before any decision is ever made. And when yesterday morning, when they told me that the bridges were starting to ice and the secondary roads were starting to snow over, I even sent my own husband out about 6 o'clock just to make sure everybody was telling me the truth. I didn't go. And I love my husband, I do. I decided even then it wasn't worth it because a 16-year-old, and if you've ever had a child total a car as a 16-year-old and you think you're going to watch them die, not worth it, people. Not worth it.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question.
Your floor.
I hope, and I will ask, but I will hope that adding days onto the end of the school year is pretty far down the options, because I'm
Can't
sure
do
when
that.
testing is over,
Can't do that. State law.
that's the answer I wanted to hear.
State law.
State law.
Now, that's why
Write your
we're
letter.
begging for flexibility. We can add teacher work days, but I need, because teachers
that's
have
not
to
gonna
work
do anything.
200, and is it 15
Yeah.
or 20 days? 215 days. But I can't pass June the 10th for,
June 10th.
yeah, for, and, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Thank you. Other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on to plus deltas. Pluses, and I expect one.
Yes, I'd like to thank Dr. Ellis for the weather briefing. I think a lot of people will benefit from that. I think you and your staff have done a wonderful job so far. Let's keep up the good work. Safety first.
Thank you.
I'll add a shout out to the facilities committee. I know you've been doing a lot of work on the CCEP, and I think we're going to see some great results from that. And hopefully we'll get that through the process and work with our county commissioners and realize those projects very soon.
And I'd like to applaud the brevity of the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Other, I begged as much as I could. Any other announcements or any other pluses? Any deltas?
The chairman's a little full of himself, sir.
That was a delta. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.